Welcome to today's presentation of the ONF Spotlight series. Let me introduce myself in a few words. My name is Mahir Gunyel. I'm working in Netsia, and I have been working in telecom software sector for more than 20 years and working with Volta community for 2 years. I'm a TST member and also the moderator of today's presentation. In this session, we have Saurabh and Rishi with us. They're going to talk about their presentation, SEBA as a building block to transform enterprise broadband service. Now I want to hand over to Saurabh to inform themselves and continue their presentation. Saurabh?
Sure, thank you, Mahir. Hi, my name is Saurabh Chattopadhyay. I am representing my company, Sterlite Technologies Limited. I work as an engineering head for wireline access solutions in the company, and I have 20 plus years of experience, all into the innovation and R&D and engineering work in the telecom networking area. I'm also involved in Volta and SEBA community for last roughly 3 years, and in the current context, there is an effort that we have put in, where there are different business verticals in Sterlite, which includes the product engineering, the solution engineering groups, and together when we worked to understand what could be the motivation for transforming the enterprise broadband services and what are the way forwards, we partnered with VMware, and we came up with this concept of SEBA as a fundamental building block for transforming enterprise broadband services, and this is what we're going to present today to you going forward. And I'll just quickly hand over to my colleague Rishi from VMware to introduce him.
Good evening, good morning, good afternoon. Hope everybody is fit and fine in these testing times. Well, my name is Hrishikesh. I work for VMware's Telco and Edge Cloud business unit. I'm a consulting solution architect. My job is primarily to work with large tier 1 operators as they look to transform their business and network. They are on a journey of disaggregation and virtualization, which we all know. From my experience point of view, I have been in the service provider industry for the past 20 plus years, involved in architecture, engineering, deployment, operation, transformation, migration of really huge service provider networks. Well, VMware has its telco and Edge Cloud business unit for the past 5 years. And that was when HC formalized their specifications, and we began work on our first version of NFV. I have been with the BU right from its inception all the way till now. I have seen the BU grow. I have really seen this market adopt virtualization and disaggregation to a large level. We partnered with Sterlite to work on this strategic initiative of transforming the enterprise broadband services market. With that, I'll hand it back to Saurabh to begin his presentation.
Great, thank you, Rishi. So let's go to the details. So we go into the next slide. All right, so thank you. So basically, when we looked at enterprise landscape, so essentially there are two observation domains that we created in the context of enterprise network. One domain is focusing on enterprise network as today the enterprise IT division is transforming, and then the second is the way the enterprise services landscape is getting transformed as the operators are leading it. Now, what we were trying to do is we're trying to sort of see the parallels. What are the transformation initiatives that are driving the enterprise IT infrastructure towards the modernization, and how does the transformation that is going on in the enterprise services landscape can can become an adjacent to to this to this initiative that is going with the enterprise IT. So when we sort of put those few observations together, there are certain parallels that we could draw, and then we could also potentially see that okay, some of these parallels are actually converging with each other and essentially offering a multiplier effect for the kind of services and the quality of experience that enterprise customers can obtain from this convergence. So what we're when we looked at it, if I go one by one, so one of the implementation area was SD-WAN, and perhaps a lot of these enterprises have adopted SD-WAN as for one of the fundamental step towards adopting software-defined networking as a technology. And then while they adopted SD-WAN, they also got that capability of essentially understanding the enterprise network demand, and then identifying a right way forward to make the best possible experience out of that enterprise demand, while they have a fixed capacity on the WAN base. Now, while that being an area for focus for the enterprise IT infrastructure org units, on the other hand, we saw that the operators are coming up with lucrative services options where bandwidth on demand and these kind of WAN link capacity management capabilities are getting introduced for the enterprise's business per se. So what it means is that one side, the enterprise network itself is trying to manage its workload, trying to manage its capacity and demand correlation, and other side, there are options that are becoming available for them to even place the demand on top of operator. So there is a potential correlation and potential complementary relationship that are evolving in the landscape between enterprise IT and between the services that are offered to the enterprises. Then similarly, when we see the movement within the enterprise IT infrastructure from from their existing in-house architecture to a cloud-based architecture, when we see the movement towards even hybrid cloud, when enterprises, if they have the enterprise private cloud, they are still looking for operating over public cloud infrastructure as well. And that sort of hybrid cloud infrastructure is something that is becoming sort of a common architectural adoption curve for the enterprises. We saw that okay, there are certain certain awareness that is coming in place where operators are essentially focusing on developing that service assurance capability for these cloud to cloud communication, for these manageability aspects of these workloads that are getting hosted on these different cloud setups, and even managing the transferability of these workloads on demand basis. So now with this infrastructural transformation within the enterprise IT infrastructure, and with this adjacency of developing the service assurance capability, it again offers a certain level of correlation and certain level of quality of experience offerings for this enterprise network infrastructure. And then one of the other interesting phenomena is that we see that the standard optical wireline technologies that are getting deployed in operators infrastructure, this similar kind of standard optical infrastructure is now also getting deployed within the enterprise as passive optical LAN. And these are early days, but then there are deployments that are available where passive optical LAN is actually becoming a predominant implementation techniques within the enterprise network itself. In fact, few of our Sterlite's offices are entirely running on passive optical LAN for a couple of years now. So, and then that's essentially, also giving us a sort of a point to have a sort of a convergence going forward, where the enterprise services that are rolled out by the operators, which caters to the optical networking demands and which also focuses on softwareizing that optical networking requirements, can also be extended for those passive optical LAN requirements that are coming from enterprise infrastructure side. So this essentially, these are the paradigms that are getting changed today as we speak. And, we started off this work with VMware more than a year ago. But then as we progressed, we saw a lot of things changing on a very, in a very rapid manner, because, and as we all know, right, with COVID-19 coming in and then impacting the, overall ways of working, essentially that also impacts our, creates a certain demand on, the way the enterprise infrastructure and the way enterprise services landscape should evolve. So all that if we put in place, then this becomes the fundamental, set of requirements which we wanted to address. And in next couple of slides, we're just going to discuss about that. Next slide, please. Thank you. So now here, if we just go into the little bit of details, so what we're saying here is that if you look at the enterprise local environment, it's essentially, the consumer edge. And if you're looking at these requirements that are evolving in enterprise local environment, like, we see the requirements of developing dynamic policy management and enforcement capabilities. We see the requirements evolving towards developing a storage and compute cloud broker capabilities. Now, if we have to, integrate, or if we have to, satisfy these requirements in the best possible way, then the requirements are not just, should not be just be, limited to the boundaries of this enterprise network infrastructure. An appropriate policy enforcement, let's say if it is about enhancing the network capacity, or if it is about enhancing the way the quality is supported for the particular type of communication that we are running at this point from enterprise customers' premise, the actual control mechanism will have to extend further. We'll have to cover those segments of the network that are beyond the control of the enterprise IT infrastructure. And that's where, we see that access network and provider edge coming in place. So here, we're trying to offer that correlation where we see that the enterprise local, environment and the demand that is coming in that environment, if it, gets extended and gets integrated with the, control and management, capabilities that are getting offered in the access network and provider edge part of the implementation, part of the network operator infrastructure. This essentially offers the holistic capability of carrying out an enterprise network and service transformation. And this implementation solely depends on the ability that is needed at the access network and the provider edge network level. And that ability is something that can only be achieved with software-defined access solutions. So if you have to have the dynamic policy enforcement points in the access network, if we have to have the ability to manage the workloads that will be transferred from enterprise local environment to the data center environment, or for that matter to a edge cloud environment, that manageability of that traffic, of that class of communication, are something that could be done only from the operator's infrastructure with the help of software-defined access network principles. So if we move forward in the next slide, we are showing how exactly this implementation, we have done. So we already have a reference design, a set of reference designs coming from ONF. We have SEBA reference design, we have Trellis. And when we club this two reference design together, and then when we look at the demands or the requirements that are coming from the enterprise part of the infrastructure, we see that a lot of these services are ruled out on top of this last mile fiber. So it could be, a sort of internet lease line, it could be a VPN over fiber. It could be, any of these enterprise services that are offered by the operators to the enterprise endpoints, enterprise branches, and offices. And when we extend this to the level of the software-defined access infrastructure, we see that the SEBA Trellis offers the building block where you have the right kind of virtualization and containerization infrastructure. You have this hardware abstraction that is needed. You have this entire fiber wireline optical infrastructure that are necessary to run this capability on a control plane and management plane segregations. And then with that, you have this, you have the building block for developing an SD-WAN controller-based policies. You have the ability to develop a WAN policies, functional block, which essentially would understand and interoperate the enterprise-centric requirements and the access network and edge-centric requirements, and will integrate together with an intelligent correlation and policy enforcement capabilities. So this is, this is what, when we looked at this architecture, the possibilities, it gave us the confidence that, if we look at actually going ahead and implementing it in a real life environment, this could potentially solve some of these, challenges, some of these transformation requirements that are, something that we have been observing while discussing with various operators, customers. So when we looked at this, when we looked at the possibility of implementing it, we went ahead and created a deployment architecture environment and also did the integration there. If we go to the next slide, it shows the deployment architecture. Yes. So this traditional, SEBA and Trellis reference design that we have here, which covers the white box OLTs, the white box venues, and extending those in the residences, the small medium business sites, and the enterprise branch sites, and then leveraging the central offices to host the leaf and spine fabric and the virtualized and containerized infrastructure, and then running the the SEBA stack and Trellis stack there, and when we're looking at integrating it with the the WAN control blocks that are coming from SD-WAN point of view as well as from the edge cloud point of view, this essentially is offering the holistic deployment model for us. So we actually went ahead and carried a lab trial, and we are in the process of running this as a field trial as well as we speak, and we are implementing it to the level where all these different use cases that that are coming from our customers, that are something that we understand is going to offer us as a as a packaged solution to our customers. All of these use cases are getting implemented and trialed there. Now I'll just hand over at this point, I'll just hand it over to my colleague Rishi, and I would request him to just talk about the VMware components that are used in this architecture.
It's pretty clear from the diagram. The components which are in navy blue or a light blue color are the VMware components. So let's begin with the data center POP. That's where you have the data center cloud infrastructure, or the vCloud NFV platform, or what we call it as the Telco cloud. At the edge POP, you have an extension of the cloud known as or represented over here as an edge cloud infrastructure. The management, administration, orchestration, automation, all these functions are carried out centrally from the data center POP. In order to connect the data center POP with the edge POP and with the branch sites, we've got our Velo Cloud SD-WAN solution. So the controller is again centralized, with edge devices being placed at the edge POP as well as the branch locations. You can see the branch router over here. So for the connectivity piece, we have the branch SD-WAN device, the edge SD-WAN device, and of course we have an SD-WAN device at the data center with the controller residing in the data center. So that's how the connectivity works. And as far as the cloud infrastructure is concerned, we have the compute, storage, the network virtualized at the DC end as well as at the edge. This is a hybrid cloud infrastructure. It allows Sterlite to run IT applications. It allows them to onboard VNF. It allows them to instantiate and run containers as well. I'll move to the next slide with this. So at VMware, like I mentioned during the introduction, we've been working on a telco and edge cloud for the past 4 to 5 years. We have gone through several enhancements. And what we have today is what you can see on the screen. It's a unified multi-tenant, multi-domain telco and edge cloud. All the management, operation, automation components sit at the central data center, which effectively means that you have more space for your compute, storage, and networking at the regional and edge locations. So since there is no management component at the regional and edge locations, you have a maximum asset utilization that is possible. Like I mentioned, it's a hybrid cloud, and it allows you to run VNF, CNFs, IT applications on the same platform. So with with centralized management, automation, operations, and a hybrid cloud, it allows partners like Sterlite and several telcos around the world to realize cost savings as well as experience a lower total cost of ownership. A key component of this is all of this looks like a single cloud, irrespective where the hardware is placed within the country, across countries. If you see there's a line or what we have represented as you see HCX over here. HCX is our hybrid cloud extension, which helps us to seamlessly move workloads between the edge, the regional, the core, or even the public cloud. Velo Cloud, which I mentioned earlier, is used to interconnect all these different locations or different sites, whether it is edge, regional, or core. The products that we have deployed in Sterlite are VMware integrated OpenStack. This is VMware's distribution of OpenStack, which is a DevCore compliant. To run containers or containerized network functions, we've got Tanzu Kubernetes Grid. Now, another key or salient feature of this cloud is immense scalability. What happens is usually you would end up with multiple clouds if you were trying to do it, but in VMware's telco and edge cloud architecture, all your operations management being centralized, you are able to scale VNFs across all regions or across all different edge locations. It provides immense scalability, so which again results in a lower TCO for the operator. Velo Cloud, which I mentioned, is used to interconnect all the sites. So VMware's Velo Cloud solution is a true software-defined WAN. It's a simple and clean architecture, which is built up of only 3 components. You have the Velo Cloud orchestrator, you have the edge devices or the telco edge SD-WAN device, and then you have the Velo Cloud gateways, which are in the public cloud as well as which are in your core data centers. A unique feature of Velo Cloud is the ability to intelligently classify traffic using deep application recognition technology. Once the traffic is classified intelligently at the edge, we use what is called as an algorithm or dynamic multipath optimization to redirect traffic on the link that we require. So basically, it's application aware redirection. This helps a partner like Sterlite and telcos to make maximum and proper utilization of the link, like send mission critical workloads on an expensive link, mission enabling or mission supporting workloads over the internet. With our Velo Cloud gateways that are present in the public cloud and in the data center, we assure a much better performance than what you would get from any branch router. The provisioning and management is using the centralized orchestrator. What we do is zero touch provisioning. So all that we have to do is ship the Velo Cloud device to the edge site. An engineer opens his laptop, connects to the edge device wirelessly, clicks on a link, and you will either pull the config from the Velo Cloud orchestrator and you're up and running within minutes. So this actually helps telcos and partners like Sterlite for a rapid GTM or rapid delivery of services to their end customers. That's all that I had to say about Velo Cloud. If there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer them now.
Sure, thanks, Rishi. So I'll just quickly cover some of these next slides, and then we'll come to the questions. So if we move to the next slide, just wanted to talk about this overall, the STL SEBA solution. We call it Programmable FTPX, and just wanted to show this stack. This is essentially a SEBA compliant stack where a lot of these components you see here, the blue components are all SEBA components curated by Sterlite, hardened and curated. And then there are these other components. The controller is also open source ONOS controller with some, modifications in terms of, some additional applications. And then there are these other infrastructure that comes from the partner, which are the hardware part of the infrastructure, and of course the firmware part of the infrastructure. And then there are these NMS and NOC infrastructure that is usually a customer specific infrastructure. So this being overall PFTTX portfolio, it's the same portfolio that we have used for integrating it on top of, for the enterprise broadband implementation. And there is an edge orchestrator that is proprietarily developed, and this edge orchestrator is used to run the WAN policy component that we was referring to in the architectural discussion. And this WAN policy actually ties the edge orchestrator and the Velo Cloud orchestrator and the cloud infrastructure control plane that comes from VMware. So there are an API integration and a correlation and policy enforcement logic that gets that has been developed specifically to address the integration and aggregation functionality that are needed specifically to support this enterprise broadband on top of SEBA. And I'll just quickly go to the last slide, just finishing remarks. So at this point, we are really looking forward to have community getting involved in this initiative. We think this is having a significant potential to grow, and if there are early adopters who would like to evaluate this architecture and implement it in their specific workflows, we would be very happy to collaborate. And of course, we are looking for more trial opportunities. If there are field trials that are needed, and if there are live service integration opportunities that are available for us to work together, we are more than happy to address those as part of this. So that's pretty much what we wanted to talk about in this presentation, Mahir. So over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. It was a great presentation and great to see more wide usage of SEBA. You know, most of the requirements of the operators are about the residential usage of the SEBA, but great to see the enterprise usage also. So what I want to ask here is, how does enterprise use of SEBA differ from the residential use? You know, what kind of new requirements are there different from the residential use case?
Sure. So when we looked at the real workflow implementations, we understood that most of the building blocks are already available in the existing SEBA architecture. So you know, when we looked at the way the bandwidth on demand to be supported on top of the enterprise, you know, grade services, and then the kind of services that are rolled out for the enterprises. It could be an lease line service, or it could be a VPN or something similar. Now, it's essentially a different workflow than what we run for enterprises, for residences. But then the difference of that workflow is something that is manageable by, you know, extending what is already there in the purview of you know, the Volta architecture. So essentially, it's a workflow implementation. The workflow is somewhat different from the existing workflows that we are already running today, but then it's still going to be satisfied with the same building blocks that are already available. And then, you know, when we looked at the prioritization requirements, like for example, this, you know, workload transfer, you know, detecting those sort of, you know, traffic, classifying those in a unique way, and then implementing some sort of dynamic prioritization capabilities on top. That essentially is also something that is already available with SEBA. It's the basically the classification mechanisms that are to be used for these you know, cloud to cloud services, cloud to cloud interactions, the workload transfer interactions, and then, you know, implementing the prioritization on those classification criteria. That, I mean, a lot of these things are already, I mean, the fundamental building blocks are there. It just requires some bit of extension to make it work for enterprise specific use cases. And when that is in place, you know, the maximum part of the implementation that has gone in to develop the WAN policy segment that needs to, you know, tie the, you know, the VMware Cloud orchestrator, the SD-WAN orchestrator, and the cloud infrastructure components, along with the PFTTX or SEBA, you know, control plane. So those integration at the control plane, where most of these, you know, logics were developed, which essentially, you know, was to, you know, ensure that a particular type of service requirements are satisfied across the span of control. It's not just localized in a particular site or in a particular you know, segment of the network. It is spreading across and in a seamless manner. That was the, you know, majority part of the development that was done.
Okay, I see that there are some benefits to using the SEBA in your solution, because there are some, as you said, there are some building blocks that you can use. But beyond these, what are the benefits of SEBA as a product to enterprise? I mean, what does it bring to its advantages to a, say, business use case?
Sure. So when it comes to, I mean, we understand that this, you know, the SEBA part of the architecture will not be directly deployed, you know, within the enterprise. So it's essentially getting deployed in operators' infrastructure. But the use case that we're talking about is, you know, identifying the implementation of this SEBA infrastructure, specifically targeting the enterprise service segment. So what it means is that when we're talking about the way operators are rolling out their enterprise services, if it could be lease line service, or it could be a VPN service, or it could be any other fiber to the last mile enterprise site service. Essentially, the requirements that are already there. I mean, today, if you look at the legacy implementation, those services are there today, but then those services are working in a very fixed and constrained manner. So we don't have a way to scale it up dynamically. We don't have ways to enforce policies in a dynamic way. We don't have ways to address prioritization or classification and these kind of networking implementations on the services that are offered by the operators. Now, when it becomes a software defined access solution with this capability being offered from the control plane, and then when it gets integrated with the existing softwareized and containerized and virtualized infrastructure that is actually getting deployed in the enterprise and the public cloud, it becomes a holistic solution. And with that, you have the ability to manage the quality of experience for the enterprise customers in a much more seamless way. You have the ability to manage the scale on demand. You have the ability to deliver the services on demand. And these are some of these unique use cases that we have been hearing from some of our customers with whom we were trying to see the transformation way forward.
Okay, thank you. Let's talk about challenges a bit. I mean, what kind of challenges you faced when using SEBA as an enterprise solution, different than the legacy product?
Yeah, sure. So I think there are definitely challenges to conceptualize the kind of architecture that will be needed for different deployment scenarios. So it was not easy to understand that what could be the potential model that different enterprises might be adopting, and how those different deployment models could still be delivering the same benefits when it comes to integrating it on a software-defined access solution, and when we talk about stretching it beyond the enterprise local environment. Now, one of the good benefits that we have, we leveraged our own internal understanding, and we got a good benefits coming from VMware. VMware being extremely aware of some of these enterprise local environment and the way some of these directions that are coming from the enterprise IT infrastructure segments. We leveraged those knowledge to understand and model what potential enterprise network infrastructure could look like, and then we also together could make that decision on how to extend that same infrastructure and how to extend the same networking capability beyond the enterprise local environment. So we discussed and identified the right kind of edge implementation and right kind of data center implementation, where we have the right infrastructure in place, we have the right controlling capabilities in place, we have the right integration in place, and then the next challenge was to tie it all together. So the control plane integration through that WAN policy component was one of the difficult things to conceptualize, because and especially when it comes to large scale implementation, because there's going to be too many enterprise sites for many of these enterprises, and then integrating it on on different segments of the access network for different branch sites of enterprises, and then maintaining that seamless controlling capabilities across the different segments, and then managing the capacity within the given available constraints, and then developing the logic to ensure that it's still a holistic offering for the enterprise branch sites for which this whole WAN policy component is working for in the given context. So all of these complexities were essentially about managing the deployment and making the most out of it, and that part of the complexity was pretty much handled in the WAN policy segment.
Okay, thank you for the great presentation, and thank you for joining us today. See you again in the community to contributing the Volta and learning together. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Mahir.
Thank you very much, Mahir.